Folks, I'm back after taking probably about a week off from editing because Tears of the Kingdom Zelda game came out, and my wife and I have been playing that. I haven't finished it yet though, so coming back to editing so I don't stop editing for 2 weeks. Let's see. Where I left off last time, was framing out chapter 13. I guess just as a refresher, kind of went through the emotional arc that I want the characters in the chapter to be going through, or where I want them to be on their character development arcs. We, and I guess also as a reminder, this chapter is one of 3 chapters I'm putting together to flesh out a secondary character called Mira, who is ultimately going to be an ally to the main character, Anna. And this is some of the major. This is some of the only major additions to content that I'm making through this first pass through of editing the book. I'm sure there'll be lots more that I'll add later, but anyway, so I've added 3 chapters to try to flesh out this character, give the reader a little bit more background of the world, and build up more of a connection with this character so that they care more about this character this character's interactions with the main character in the final what do you call it, act of this book. So right to the specifics, Tamira is having dinner with her mother, whom she doesn't see eye to eye with, and during this meal, I'm spreading this meal out across 3 chapters, and each chapter is having a flashback where there'll be some emotional development and some plot development and some character development in those flashbacks for Tamira, all leading up to the present, which is this sort of final of the 3 chapters before Tamira starts interacting with the main character in the main storyline. Yeah, so to remind myself as much as anything, I want to make sure that the content shows that Tamira is nervous because at the end of this meal, she's going to go do a task that she's anxious about. Also want to, there's going to be a boiling point at the end of the meal where she's about to snap at her mother about things she doesn't see eye to eye with, even though she's been trying to keep the peace a little bit. But instead of snapping, she's going to take a mental step back and try to see the relationship from a new perspective and leave the dinner with the relationship in a better place than it was when she got there, because she doesn't know if she'll see her mother again, because the thing she's about to do after this is very dangerous. I still want to build tension, right? I still want to build tension in this chapter as if she's going to boil over, so that it feels significant when she doesn't, but still have that drama. And then this is going to be the main thing that I'll be thinking about how to convey today in the writing I'm doing today. Demir realizing that she's been attributing too much of her self-worth based on what her mother thinks, and then what the RSA, who is her employer, military employer, thinks of her. And emotionally at this point, she's at a stage where she's feeling validated by a third entity, the Convergence. So Demira's arc is ultimately her realizing that she can achieve it her own self-worth. She doesn't have to get it from others. And that there's 2 organizations. Well, in the beginning of her life, she was trying to get validated by her family, her parents, her mother. And when that doesn't work out, she rebels and joins the RSA. and puts all of her effort into them validating her. But she'll realize that they weren't validating her either, and that's part of what leads her to joining the Convergence. So just sort of another organization with power over her, and she's not going to realize that she's still getting her self-worth validated by the Convergence at this point. That's not going to come till the end of the book, and she's not going to realize it because the Convergence is actually the first organization that is truly supportive and validating for her. So now she doesn't feel a lack of validation, but she's still not going to realize that she's not intrinsically realizing her self-worth. I think that's probably a bit deeper and more nuanced than I'm expecting the readers to necessarily get out of this unless they're looking for it. And maybe I'm not giving enough credit to my readers, and maybe I should just write it well enough so that it does come across and it isn't opaque. But I'm not going to stress out too much if some of this, at least in this edit for sure, if not in the final book, is something that is a little bit more subtext and isn't super obvious unless you're looking for it. In any case, I think it'll still be a framework on how I inject the emotion and plot into these scenes so that it's not just writing chapters for the sake of plot development, because there is plot development that I want to do. So that's the emotional arc. I decided to once again break this chapter up into sort of 3 parts, the beginning, middle, and end. So there's sort of 3 acts to this chapter as well. And the first and last parts are taking place at the present, and it's Demira and her mother interacting at this dinner between the two of them at her mother's residence. But the middle is a flashback, as I've done with the other chapters with Demira. That's where the real plot is going to happen. That's going to sort of advance the main. It will be advancing context for the main storyline. So this is important. This isn't just like building up emotional connections for Demira. I want to make sure this middle part of it does some world building and plot building for some of the things behind the scenes that just get casually mentioned later in the book, but I'll actually show them here instead of just sort of casually mentioning that they had happened. And that way I'm showing, not telling, as self-editing books would suggest you do. Alright, so that point, here's where I had started drafting what's actually going to happen in the middle part of this chapter, which is where I've decided to start. I want to cover, specifically, the point where Demira's allegiance changes from being loyal to the RSA to being loyal to the Convergence. And I want it to include Davos, who is another secondary or maybe more of a tertiary character that I'm not going to devote any whole chapters or significant content to doing, but still this chapter of Davos and Demira interacting should give the reader a little bit more investment in Davos when he comes up again at the last act of this book. So I decided that it would be, I think, let me just read this. So I was planning on having Davos and Demira hold up together due to some circumstance. Maybe the RC is actually trying to take out Davos because they know Davos has defected. And also, oh, right, no, not the RC. Oh, yeah, the RC, which is the military organization that Davos works for and is in opposition to the RSA, which is the military organization that Demira works for. Maybe I should change those names. More on that later. Right, okay, so maybe Davos is trying to be killed by his old military organization because I know that Davos has defected, and also that Davos knows a lot about the RC super soldier program, and then maybe Demira gets mixed up in this conflict and learns that Davos is not an undercover agent for the RC, which is one of their main concerns in investigating Davos. I thought he was an undercover agent trying to infiltrate the RSA. And so if Davos risks his life to protect Demira, then Demira can do the same for him. And then after that conflict, maybe they can get on talking, and Demira will learn that their two sides aren't so different, and she can see herself in Davos, having also been the product of a failed super soldier program. And then, oh man, yeah, that's all coming back to me, even though this is only like a week and a half old, 2 weeks old maybe at this point. So there'll be some sort of conflict where Anton, who is Demira's boss at the RSA, asks Demira for some intel that would jeopardize the Convergence, which is the organization that Davos belongs to, and then Demira will end up lying to Anton, and that'll be the moment where their alliance change. I think that is pretty satisfying, and will lead right into the next chapter pretty well. So let's figure out the circumstances. I'm close to actually starting to write after all this outlining and talking and thinking. Yep, after sleeping on it for more than a week, I think this is what I want to do. I think this will be satisfying. So now I want to think of this specific circumstance. Let's think. How would the RC come after Davos? So the RCs, they don't have any military operations on the same continent as the RSA, so it's not going to be like a big land attack or anything like that. They could send a covert agent to personally assassinate Davos. That would definitely add some secret agent, super spy shenanigans, which could be interesting, but might be a little bit involved to write, because you might want a little bit more of a blow by blow, and like I feel like those scenes work better when there's like a lot of like jump scares and building tension and running around and parkour and stuff like that to sort of heighten the action and show off that they're super agents. So that's maybe not the way that I want to go. I have to think about how that situation would put Demira's life at risk in a way that Davos could very specifically put himself in danger to stop her, even though he would obviously be the main target of this attack. So it doesn't really seem like the attacker would put their attention on Demira until they've taken care of Davos, and so that's a little bit, I mean, I'm sure I could set it up, but it's maybe not the most obvious setup. Could do a Captain America, Black Widow in what is it called? Winter Soldier move, where they're at the military camp and it gets bombed and they have to hide under a building to survive a bomb, and that could be a pretty straightforward. I should talk about Davos's fighting style a little bit here as well, because that's not been introduced. And at this point in the story, the only introduction that the reader will have had to Davos is some security cam footage of Davos knocking on a door and revealing that he has a metal hand / arm. But because it'll be important on how this fight scene gets written, or this action scene gets written, Davos is basically like the tank. He's like a big guy. He's got he lost an arm in an accident, and the military puts his military organization RC put this experimental super soldier tech on his arm. Very Winter Soldiery, except his arm's a lot more, you might say, like anime style. It's got like a big old shield that can deploy and a big old cannon built into it, etc. And he has a exo spine as well. So anyways, he's not like a, and all that's getting down to, he's not a super agile. He's more of like a blow things up and take big hits kind of guy, which is why. Whereas Demir is kind of the opposite. She's much more Black Widow-y in her super agent, undercover agent kind of work. So far we've got like a, they could be attacked by a assassin. They could be attacked. They could be pinned down by an assassin. That'd be another way to do it, by an assassin with like a long-ranged sniper rifle or something like that. That'd be one way to do it. They could still build some tension, but be pretty simple to write. I don't want to make this like Dragon. I don't want to put a big ol' action scene in here for the sake of having a big ol' action scene. I think this book has enough action scenes in general. I do want an action scene in this chapter for the excitement of it, but I don't want to necessarily have like a big long action scene for the sake of just running around and doing parkour and stuff like that. So if there was an assassin, maybe it'd be more of like a sniper kind of situation, and they need to get out of that situation. That'd be one way to do it. Or we could have an air attack with a bunch of explosives, or like a drone. Yeah, we have a drone flying around trying to take him out. Or just like, incoming missiles, that sort of thing. That's always an option that could work well, because Davos could like definitely, if there was going to be like a big explosion kind of an attack, Davos could definitely like use his body and his arm shield to protect Amira, and that would be very, that'd be like, perfectly in line with how I want to write his action motifs. Making that up, verbiage on the spot. The other thing that I've been thinking about is where this is going to take place. Because I don't have a lot of like set pieces developed so far in the book. I have a few, but we've got the we've got New Manhattan, which is the sort of rebuilt futuristic city of New York. And I don't think it would make sense for there to be like, I mean, certainly not like a drone or a missile attack in the city. That the RSA who's based in Manhattan would take care of that. They wouldn't let that sort of attack happen. So, and that'd just be ridiculous. I don't think that RC would, directly attack a city to get one person. So if it was based in the city, I think it'd be better if it was like a assassin sort of an attack. Other locations that it could exist at could be at the Dark Sands Research Lab, which is this research lab out in the sand dunes that have covered Kansas, Tennessee. I forget which state I put in at this point. I think it's Tennessee. But I don't think. Well, Convergence does have a vested interest in the Dark Sands Research Laboratory. Maybe that actually is a good place to put it. I could pre-introduce something I'm bringing up later to make that a little bit stronger. I was gonna say I have no reason. That'd be kind of like really out of the way, location-wise. But maybe it's a good thing. I was gonna say I don't have an excuse for them to be out there, but I do actually already have like a perfect excuse for them to be out there. Yeah, that would be ideal, actually. Okay, so yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. And it would lend itself well to an aerial attack, which is going to be easy to write, and will show off Davos's skills pretty well. Yeah, maybe that's what I want to do. So there's this other location that has come up a couple of times and comes up frequently in the last act of the book as well. So it's be nice to do a little more build up there. And basically, there's this research lab that is underneath. It's a subterranean research lab underneath these sand dunes in. Gosh, I want to say Tennessee. I should probably look it up. Tennessee? Come on, computer. You can find it. Come on. Oh, I don't know. I think it's Tennessee. I might look at it right now because the search function is really slow in Google Docs for some reason when I have my Twitch stream going. It is a big document. It's like a few hundred-page document, so it does take a little bit of time to find things. Anyways, I was saying, so there's this research lab in, I think, Tennessee that's been covered in sand dunes. It's a subterranean research lab, and it's where the RSA is doing this top secret research, and it's going to come to a head at the end of the book because the Convergence wants to stop them from doing that research. So the Convergence is trying to find a way to infiltrate this research lab, and we learn at the end of the book, in the final act, the way that they're planning on infiltrating it is it actually comes up a couple of times, so it might be nice to reinforce it. And I didn't use it yeah. So basically, like 1,000 years ago in this book, this takes place like 1,000 years in the future. So back in our present time, in like 2020 or whatever, 2030, I think is when I've set it to be. There's a research lab where some top secret research is happening, and something goes wrong, and that creates a lot of the events that happen in this, in the rest of the book. And in the future, the RSA military organization wants to recover that research from like 1,000 years ago, so they excavate these sand dunes that have covered Tennessee and covered up the research lab that used to be there. Okay, so they excavate it, they find the research lab, and they set up a new research lab there. And so it's also pretty hard to attack. It's a very safe location because it's like the research lab is buried under like a massive amount of sand. So the Convergence, who would like to stop them from doing that research, knows that in the past, 1,000 years ago, that research lab used to have a tunnel that connected it to a bomb shelter in the town. and that bomb shelter is at the school. There's like a high school in the town, and there's a bomb shelter. The basement of the high school is a bomb shelter. And so Convergence takes on their own covert excavation experiment or activities to try and find that high school underneath all the sand at a safe distance from the research, the Dark Sands Research Laboratory, as it's called. And they do find that high school. They excavate down to it. And then their plan is to take that original tunnel from the original bomb shelter that still is intact over to attack in order to just break into the basement of the Dark Sands Research Laboratory rather than trying to come in through the front door and from the top. Which is something that kind of gets explained. That's explained later in the book. But maybe actually what we'll see here, since this is a flashback, is maybe Demira and Davos written together to try and find and excavate the high school. Which could be a nice little motif. Because I could, at the beginning of the book, which takes place 1,000 years ago in like 2030, I could have I already have safety training set up in that part. So I could have a little bit of a throwaway line where the main character, Anna, and her love interest, Avon, are walking through town and like notice or learn about the bomb shelter or inform that there's a bomb shelter in the high school. That way, when I bring up the fact that there's a high school with a bomb shelter in this chapter, the reader will be like, oh, the Dark Sands Research Laboratory must be built on the same site as the original Mech Institute Research Laboratory 1,000 years ago. Oh, blah, blah, blah. It'll be like a little moment of realization. That'd be a nice little thing to pop up. A little reference point. And then in the last act of the book, when I mention it again, it won't be I won't have to explain so much at that point. I'll just be like, hey, there's this thing. And they'll be like, I know there's this thing. And I won't have to go into so much detail at that point. So the story so that the last act can move along at a little bit of a faster rate. Okay, let's do that. I think that's also a great excuse for Davos and Demira to be holed up together. Because and it's perfect because they're gonna get bomb attacked, but they're gonna survive because they're in a bomb shelter, and everybody will think they're dead. It's perfect. Okay. Yeah, and then so I'll set up this book. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. All right. Writing the actual outline of what's gonna happen. So we're gonna have Davos and Demira are going to be out in the desert. Oops. They're going to be in a desert in the chapter called the Desert Chapter. Fun. It's cute. Are going to be out in the desert. Excavating. Also, this is totally just freaking the Winter Soldier ripped off, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Everybody copies. That's what we're going to be in the desert, excavating the dune to try to find this high school bomb shelter that used to exist 1,000 years ago. Where should they be in that process? I feel like it would be good if they haven't quite found it yet, and they find it just in the nick of time and they drop into it so they can survive the bomb. Perfect. Okay, so they know they are close. They're probably using some sort of ultrasonic depth finder to try to locate the shelter. Oh man, Davos is gonna, yeah, oh, this is gonna be great. Okay. They can chat a bit as they are working, which will humanize Davos, because so far, like, the reader doesn't know anything about Davos besides the fact that he has a metal hand. He might be an undercover agent. Slash introduce his personality. Ugh, I have to make sure I do that the way I want it, because I think I like the personality that I've set up for him, but yeah. Okay. Then I think at this time, Demira is learning about the plan to attack the RSA, and she'll be like, oh boy, I'm such a good secret agent. I've uncovered the RC's plan to send Davos to attack the RSA research base. I'm pausing because this is exactly what she was sent to do, and everything is lining up to look exactly like her suspicions. The RSA suspects that Davos has joined the Convergence as a means to the RSA is suspicious of the Convergence. The Convergence hasn't done anything overtly offensive to the RSA, but they do seem apolitical, and they do have the Convergence has like sympathists in there's Convergence like cultists, essentially. That's how the RSA is thinking about them in both New Manhattan and also in the areas under the control of the RC in like Eastern Europe and Asia. And the RSA thinks that Davos, who is an agent, who literally is a like super soldier agent trained by the RC, is using the Convergence to basically sneak into the country and into like North America, but they don't necessarily think that Davos really cares about the Convergence. They think he's just using the Convergence to get access to the RSA. So Davos going on a mission to try to attack the RSA research base is like totally in line with that theory, In reality, Davos doesn't like the RC. He's defected from it, and the Convergence actually overtly wants to attack the RSA. It probably doesn't make a huge difference to the RSA. That both, in either case, they're being attacked. Anyway, so I paused because at this stage, Demira should be like, exactly, she'd be like, oh boy, I'm so good at my job. Exactly what I was sent to do. And so, and she'll have figured out the plan. At this point, I guess she will know the plan to find this like bomb shelter high school secret tunnel. And so why, I guess what I'm thinking is why wouldn't she have any excuse for why she wouldn't have just already sent this intel over to the RSA. And it's bad if she does because they're planning on using this like later in the book. Like RSA can't know about this plan is where I'm stuck. And I'm trying to think of why she wouldn't have already informed the RSA of this plan if she'd gotten this far. And I guess there's three options. The first option is some sort of MacGuffin, like she can't talk to the RSA right now because her radio's broken, or Davos makes her don some sort of intel radio frequency scrambling device so that they can be covert, some sort of MacGuffin to explain that she can't be in the communication with the RC right now, or sorry, the RSA right now. And that's fine. It does mean I need to basically add in a sentence or two explaining this, and it's just a little bit of a crutch to lean on. People, I feel like, do this pretty frequently. I don't know if that makes me a bad writer. But I definitely don't want there to be like a plot hole. Like, I definitely don't want to leave it so that the reader isn't like, oh, well, why shouldn't she told him already? The RSA already. So I don't want it to be a total plot hole. Anyway, so I do some sort of MacGuffin reason why she can't talk. That's probably fine and been pretty straightforward to write. Alternatively, I can make it so that she's still in the dark until the very last critical moment, and she doesn't learn the plan until after Davos has a chance to save her. And then at that point, she'll learn the plan and then decide not to share it. That is, I think, preferable, because then I don't have to introduce this MacGuffin device. And then when she learns the details of this plan, she can have the immediate reaction of, oh boy, I'm a good secret agent, but then immediately have to think, oh wait, but do I trust people that I'm sending, that I'm supposed to tell about this? Because at that point, she'll have some sympathy. She'll be more sympathetic to Davos because he'll have just saved her life, essentially. Plus, at that point, the bomb shelter could be the MacGuffin device. Like, maybe her communications don't work because they're in a bomb shelter and it's, too much concrete and steel blocks the signal. And I wouldn't have to invent a whole new MacGuffin. That's not bad. I'm preferring the second option more. And then the third option is I think I had a third option, but now I'm blanking on it. I've forgotten it. what I'm thinking about right now is I think, as I sort of wrote up above, Davos saving Demira's just alone, Davos putting himself in danger to save Demira is not going to be enough for Demira to defect from the RSA. That's not going to do it. The second thing that'll happen that's going to push her closer to that, or maybe pushes her all the way to that, will be, or could be, Davos and Demira discussing, like Demira realizing that Davos is not working for the RC and is in fact just working for the Convergence. And they could have some discussion about how they're both ex-super soldiers at that point, essentially. Davos already thinks that Demira defected. Like, Davos thinks they're the same, basically. Davos is viewing them both as literally ex-super soldiers that have defected to the Convergence. So Davos is, like, sold on this. And Demira will be realizing that they are indeed two-piece, that they would be two-piece in the pot if she defected. I don't know if that is 100% enough to make her flip, like, in this scene. And I want her to flip in this scene so that it's snappy. I don't want it to be like she sleeps on it and wakes up and decides that she's going to do it. That's boring. So the third and final clinching thing that could happen, potentially, is after the RC attacks them and Davos saves her, the RSA could attack them and Demira could save Davos, and then there would be soldiers bonded by the tests of battle, etc. And at that moment, Demira would realize that the RSA doesn't mind killing her if it means they can kill Davos. And then, that's plenty for her to flip. And then that way, when we get back to the dinner scene at the end of this chapter, the reader will know this entire time that Demira has been at dinner, and the entire 3 chapters of her, the entire time in the present, without, in the year 3050 or wherever this is set, she's actually been defected from the RSA, and that'll be a little bit more punchy. And then it'll be super clear in the subsequent chapters when Demira is interacting with Anton, her boss, that she has hiding the fact that she's defected and she's double agent, that she's defected from the RSA. And that'll add a lot of emotional tension to those scenes. So I think we're going to do it in 3 stages. So not at this time. This hasn't happened quite yet. There will be 3 steps to Mira's defection. 1, realizing. 1, realizing that Davos has defected from the RC. This will come from the RC attacking Davos. 2, Davos saving Demira during the RC attack. 3. Demira saving Davos. Well, that's sort of the opposite of it. Demira realizing the RSA just sees her as a disposable asset. This will come from the RSA attacking Davos without regard to her proximity. And then I suppose 4, which is Demira saving Davos during the RSA attack. Alright, this is fleshing out to be a pretty chunky chapter. Oops. Proximity. There we go. This will be a pretty chunky chapter. Okay, so now I want to describe how these, go one level deeper, describe how these are actually going to happen on the page. Here's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Let's just keep adding. Demira learning the plan, the convergence's plan to attack the RSA's Dark Sands Research Lab and deciding to not tell Anton, who at this point thinks she is dead. But I guess we'll need some sort of explanation. She'll have to have gone back to Anton and been like, boy, I barely survived that. And Anton will be like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were there. And then she'll be like, uh-huh, right. And she'll keep working for the RSA because she wants to be a double agent, essentially. Okay, who at this point Anton thinks? Who at this point thinks she is dead? Okay, that's going to be the full, yeah. And at that point, it'll be clear she's switched sides. Okay, so what do the actual beats for this look like? So and I guess this is a different way of writing than I have written a lot of this book. I guess just taking a step back. When I wrote this book, when I wrote the first draft of this book, when I started writing it, I had kind of two big major, I had the emotional journey of the main character Anna, sort of. I understood what I wanted it to look like. But it was at like a big scale. So I will say that I wrote the first draft of this book with that emotional journey in mind for the main character, but at like a big scale. I didn't really break down so much specific emotional character development or in the individual chapters like I'm doing here. And I'm doing it here because I am just devoting 3 chapters to Demira out of this whole book, and I do want her to have a good emotional journey, so I'm trying to pack in a lot more into it. Also, I'm just trying to write, like this time around, I'm just actually trying to write good instead of trying to get the words down on the page like I did for the first draft of this. But I'm really enjoying at all levels of working on the plot, of thinking about, like, when I ask myself how should the like specific actions in this, even an action scene, play out. I think I'm enjoying thinking about them from like an emotional arc perspective, even at this mini stage here of like the arc that's existing here is just the arc of Demira going from, it's a big change for her, for obviously, defecting essentially, but making decisions on how the action should go based on that emotional arc at this level of granularity I'm enjoying, and it definitely makes me want to go back to a lot of other chapters and think about them from this perspective, and rework them from this perspective, which will be a lot of work, but I think it's worth doing. Well, let's see how this chapter turns out. Anyways, back to the actual specifics. So they could just be chatting. And Anne could become convinced from the chatting that he's defected from the RC. But I don't think that's realistic, because I think that they have at this point been working together a little bit side by side in the Convergence. And I think Demira is just assuming that she's an undercover agent for the RSA and Davos is an undercover agent for the RC. When that's not actually true, Davos is not an undercover agent. But anyway, so I think through like casual chatting, she isn't gonna like realize, like, Davos is assuming that Davos would tell other Convergence members that he defected, and I don't think that she's thinking that a lie essentially at this point. I don't think I want to come from the casual chatting. I think the moment where they discover, where she realizes that she hasn't defected, is when the RSA, or when the RC, when they discover that the RC is attacking them. I think that's the moment where I'm really going to start outlining this, is how do they realize specifically that the RC is attacking Davos? And I think what's going to happen is that well, here's one thing that could happen. Demira is in contact with Anton at this point. There's no reason she's not. I think I'm going to do the thing where she discovers the plot later, so she doesn't immediately relay it to Anton. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that Anton is going to say, hey, Demira, there's like a missile coming, and it's going to like hit you, just like in Winter Soldier. And Demira's going to be like, what? From who? And then Anton will be like, oh, it's an RC missile. It's trying to, like, they found Davos somehow, and they're going to try to kill him. So you guys need to, like, GTFO. And Anna will be like, yo, Davos, the RC is trying to kill you. And Davos will be like, oh my god, that makes sense. Because I defected. And Anna will be like, oh my god. In her mind, she'll be like, oh my god, he really did defect. He actually is just working for the Convergence, and the Convergence is just whatever. And I guess at this point, Anton will have realized that Davos defected, because if Anton's... he'll know that the RC is sending a missile to hit them. Um, hey, fanfictioneer guy, thanks for following. Appreciate it. Um, let's see. Hey, how's it going? Let's see. What are the implications of Anton realizing that Davos is not an undercover agent for the RC and in fact does work for the Convergence, and that the Convergence is trying to attack the RC? I guess that's all going to happen to Anton as well. It's not just Anna that's going to realize that stuff. Um, I'll think about that later, because that's a lot to unpack. I guess the question is, would... Hey, how's it going? I think you might be my first real follower. It's hard to tell. I think I have like 3 or 4 followers, and the other ones might be bots. So, um, let's see. I think realistically, oh cool, great. Um, I think realistically, the RSA would, like, if there was a missile like coming in to attack um, Davos and Demira, and they're not too far away from the RSA's like super secret desert research base. I'm trying to think about like why that would even happen. You think the RSA would like have missile defenses or whatever? Like there needs to be a reason, and so maybe I will actually take advantage of that. Um, maybe the RSA. If it helps, there's an actual category called writers. It's a bunch of writing streamers that I all use. Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you. I couldn't figure out what category writers were actually in. I'll have to switch over to that. Shaded. So I think I'll use the fact that the RSA could do something about this missile attack as a way to further the plot a bit, because Demira can be left wondering why didn't they stop the missile if it was coming in to hit us. Hello. What was that? Yeah, in a few minutes. Sweet, nice. Yeah. Okay. So Demir will be left wondering when the missile does hit, like why the RSA couldn't do anything about it. And then when like a follow-up missile from the actual RSA comes to hit them, she'll be like, "Oh, okay, they really don't care about me." Okay, so write that down. So Dara will. Oh, sweet. I was wondering if there's a Discord as well. That's also super helpful. Thanks. I'll have to go on that. Yeah, that would be fantastic. I'd appreciate that. I don't know how to. I'm pretty bad at Discord. But what do I do? Do I just send you like my Discord username or something like that? How do I get invited to things in Discord? Um, let's see. Demira will. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Really appreciate that. That's very nice. Let's see. Demir will will be notified by Anton that an RC missile is incoming. She'll tell Davos and also realize that, yeah, he has indeed defected from the RC. Okay, that's enough detail for that. Okay, the next step, Davos saving Demir. Like, how's that actually going to happen? I think maybe they will have not. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Let's see. So, Dov's actually saving Demira. I think at this point they won't have quite found the bomb shelter yet. They won't quite found the bomb shelter yet, so Davos will have to be the shield that saves Demira. Okay, and then is that enough? Maybe that's enough. Maybe I don't need a second missile from the RSA so that Demira can still be more. So it's not, because it's going to be a little bit weird to write like. It's going to be a little bit weird to write the fact that the RSA shoot the missile at Demira, but then she survives and then goes back to the office and is like, hey, did you shoot a missile at me? Are we still good? Like, that's kind of weird and awkward. So maybe Demira. Yeah, okay. Okay. I do need Demira to save Davos. So maybe there can be a second RC missile. Maybe that's more clean. Boy, I don't know. So I think what's missing here is I need a concrete reason why the RSA would want Demira dead. And I think that so I've already introduced this earlier in the book. There's a scene with the main character where basically whenever she gets too close to learning about the Convergence's true intentions, they basically kill her. And that's not a big deal because yada yada yada. I'm not going into all the plot, but she's basically gets like reborn in new bodies. Whatever, Blade Runner style or whatever all those movies are, Westworld, whatever style. Anyways, so maybe that's how I do it here as well. Maybe Anna is inadvertently going to learn some forbidden information, and the RSA sends a missile to try to attack them. Oh, thank you. Let's see. Are they available for the chat? That is a good question. I think they are, unless I disabled it. I don't know. If you paste a link, does it not show up? Let me look at the chat settings. So I'm also pretty new to Twitch as well. I think they are. Oh yeah, perfect. I think I did get that. Let me see if that works. It is loading. Oh, I think that worked. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Thank you. No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me reorganize my windows here. All right. Perfect. Okay. Thanks so much. I really appreciate all that's there in the invite. Let's see. Where was I here? Oof. Okay, here we go. So maybe Demira learns some information that the RSA. Oh, okay. Yeah. Here we go. That the RSA doesn't want her to learn, and so they send their own missile, but this time I will do. Thank you very much. This time. Oh, yeah. No. This is the obvious thing. The RSA can just lie. Perfect. Okay. Scratch all that. The RSA will decide that they actually do want Davos dead, and they're willing to just sacrifice Demira because whatever, because they're heartless, etc. And so they'll send their own missile, and the reason that Demira won't be like, it won't be obvious that they're trying to kill her, is they're going to lie and say that the RC sent another missile, in fact. So the RSA will lie and say, okay, the RC, fun. The RSA will, yeah, okay. RSA will say there is a second missile, but IRL, it is a second RC missile. RL, it is an RSA missile, which Demira will end up noticing, even when they think she won't. Okay. Okay, I think that's enough for this morning. I should probably go make breakfast. Um, but thanks, the fanfictioneer guy, for joining in the Discord invite. And I'll probably try to stream some more tonight, maybe an hour or so. I'll try to stream every few days at least. And I guess I'll see some folks on the Discord. That sounds exciting. I think we'll call it there. I think that's a good place to pick up on for next time. Thanks, everybody.